What's up, everybody? This is Mr. Richardson coming at you live through the power of the internet. What we're going to do today is talk about factoring, specifically trinomials, where the a term has a leading coefficient of 1. Let's jump right into it. We've talked about before what factoring means, what it means to factor. What factoring is just simply to write something as a product. For instance, this is not a product. This is a sum. There is an addition sign. If I wanted to, I could write this as a product by factoring out the 2x squared, which is the greatest common factor of both terms, and I would have this written as the product of 2x squared and 5x plus 4. We say this top form here is known as standard form. This bottom form here is factored form. It's written as a product. Today what we specifically want to do is factor trinomials. Trinomial has the word tri in it meaning 3 and nomial meaning many or many terms. So what a trinomial is it's just a polynomial with 3 terms. Specifically, the type of polynomials we're going to look at today have this general form. They have an x squared term, they have an x term, and they have a constant term. A, B, and C will represent numbers, and there'll always be an x squared and an x. This here is in standard form, and specifically all the trinomials we're going to look at today, the A piece here will always equal 1. The reason I wrote here is that the trinomials will always have A not equal to 0. As you could imagine, if there was a 0 here, 0 times x squared would be 0. This term would essentially disappear when it's added to this, and we'd just be left with 2 terms. So in order for it to be a trinomial here, we're going to say that the ax squared plus bx plus c term, a today, will always equal 1. Let's look at how you do this. I'm just going to give you guys the steps. Here's a step to factor a trinomial of this form. Step 1 is put the trinomial in standard form, meaning if the bx term is first, something like this, I could take the bx term and maybe put it here. I'd have to put it in standard form. Make sure that bx term is where it's supposed to be, which is right here in the middle, and I have this. Step 2, find 2 numbers that multiply to c and add to b. There's going to be a number here as the constant piece. Make sure it multiplies to whatever that constant piece is. And then there's going to be a constant here in front of the x term. Make sure that whatever that piece there is b. And these numbers will always be a factor pair of c, meaning they're always going to multiply to this number here. And then after you do that, just place the 2 numbers in the following binomial product. Binomial meaning 2 terms, and there's a product. Let's take an example to make this a little more concrete. Here I want to factor this trinomial, x squared plus 5x plus 4, and I notice here that the a term is 1. In order to factor this, I need to find 2 terms that multiply to c and add to b. Here the c term is 4, and the b term is 5. Essentially, I want to find 2 numbers that multiply to 4 and add to 5. Well, think about what numbers might do that. They have to be factor pairs of 4, meaning they need to multiply to 4. The only factor pairs of 4 are 1 and 4 and 2 and 2. Those are the only numbers that are going to multiply to 4. So now I want to think of which one of these 2 pairs, 1 and 4, or 2 and 2, will multiply to 4, both of them, but add to 5. Well, if you guess correctly, it is 1 and 4. Those are the 2 numbers that do this. Now, whenever I factor this, it always shows up in this binomial product every single time, and all I do is I fill in the blanks with the missing pieces. What's missing here could be positive 1 and positive 4. If those were negative numbers, I would write negative 4 and negative 1, and it doesn't matter that the orders that the positive 4 and the 1 go in. I could change the order and put these in the opposite places. It's still the same factors. If I want to check my answer, all I have to do is FOIL this expression and make sure that it equals x squared plus 5x plus 4. You have your standard form, and now we've written it as a product, or factored it. Let's take a look at another example. In this example, I want to factor x squared plus 7x plus 6. Step 1 is find 2 terms that multiply to c and add to b. So I want to find 2 numbers that multiply to 6 and add to 7. When I think about that, there's not many factor pairs of 6. The only factor pairs of 6 are 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. Well, which one of these pairs also adds to 7? It actually here is 1 and 6. So every trinomial will always factor like this. What I'll fill in the blank is with positive 1 and positive 6. Why don't you guys try one? See if you can factor this expression. To factor this expression, find two numbers that multiply to negative 8, the c term, and add to negative 2, the b term. Well, the only numbers that could do that could be 1 and 8 and 2 and 4. Now I want to think which ones would add or subtract to negative 2. If you guessed it, it's 2 and 4. Now I want to think what might the signs be that would make this happen. Well, if 4 was positive and 2 was negative, they'd add to positive 2. So the signs must be opposite. The signs must be negative 4 and positive 2. So every trinomial factors the same, just like this here. And all I want to do is place the negative 4 and the positive 2 there. Let's try 3 more. Here, see if you can factor this trinomial. Here what I need is two numbers that multiply to negative 12 and add to 4. The only factor pairs of 12 are 1 and 12, 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. Well, 1 and 12 don't look like they would add and subtract to 4, and neither do 3 and 4, so those are out. So it must be 2 and 6. Well, what should the signs be to multiply to a negative and add to a positive? Well, one must be positive and one must be negative. It should be negative 2 and positive 6. All I have to do is use this again, trinomial or binomial product, and just plug in. See if you can solve this one. In order to factor this, I need two numbers that multiply to 8 and add to negative 6. The two numbers that multiply to 8 and add to negative 6 will be negative 2 and negative 4. Place those in the following binomial product. So you have x minus 2 and x minus 4. Last example. See if you guys can factor this trinomial expression. Here I need two numbers that multiply to 16 and add to 17. Those numbers are 1 and 16. Place those numbers in this binomial product, so you have x plus 1, x plus 16. I hope you guys learned a lot about how to factor trinomials where a equals 1. We'll see you next time.